Let us study the Word of God together with the sermon titled, Do Not Fear, for I Am With You. In order for God's amazing work of power to take place, we need faith above all things. The power, authority, and promises of the Holy Spirit of God cannot be fulfilled without faith. That is why God says to all His beloved children, Do not fear, I am with you. Be courageous. God gives these words in all circumstances. In the midst of disbelief, indecision, hesitation, and lack of courage, God's work cannot take place at all. Let us confirm this through the prophecies of the Bible. Never be afraid. From a prophetic perspective, one of the greatest enemies of this age is fear, and it is hiding within each and every one of us. We must defeat this enemy. When God selected Gideon's warriors, God first let those who trembled with fear return to their homes. Of the 32,000 men, only 10,000 remained. The other 22,000 returned to their homes. Then, what kind of mindset did the 22,000 men have when they went to the battle? They were afraid and more concerned about what other people would think of them. My neighbors, John and Bill, are joining the battle. If I'm the only one who does not join, wouldn't I be singled out and ridiculed in the neighborhood? With such a thought, they just followed others without having any sense of purpose. As they came to the battlefield, the enemies had powerful weapons and were great in number. They were afraid. God looks at our hearts. Those who are already afraid of their enemies can never win a battle or a war. If fear takes control of us, from that moment on, nothing will look correct or favorable anymore. The spirit of faith that the Israelites had 3,500 years ago, and the spirit of faith that the heavenly people have in this age should be the same. It is because the relationship between them and us is a shadow and its reality. Let us turn to Joshua chapter 1. Let us look at Joshua chapter 1, verse 2. Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people, get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I'm about to give to them, to the Israelites. I will give you every place where you set your foot, as I promised Moses. Your territory will extend from the desert to Lebanon, and from the great river, the Euphrates, all the Hittite country, to the great sea on the west. No one will be able to stand up against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you, nor forsake you. What should you be? Be strong. And what else should you be? Courageous. This is what God always commands us to be. Be strong and courageous. Because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their forefathers to give them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Do not let this book of the law depart from your mouth. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. This is how God encouraged Joshua, by saying, do not be afraid. Numerous types of situations where people could not help but be afraid, perplexed, and fearful were spread out before Joshua and before the Israelites. However, what kind of faith did Joshua have? Among the 12 spies, 10 of them lost their courage. What did Joshua say to them when they lost their courage and were afraid? We will swallow up our enemies. Therefore, do not be afraid of them. Everyone, is there anyone who is afraid of the rice bowl when having a meal? No, there is no one. He meant there is absolutely nothing to be afraid of. When Joshua looked at the circumstances with absolute faith in God's promise, such external circumstances were not visible to him. No matter what circumstances and conditions they were in, he could only see God's promise. When we look at the history of Joshua conquering the land of Canaan, the only expression that was recorded over and over in the Bible was, since God helped Joshua, he continued to be victorious. Behind these scenes, what kind of faith did God ask him to have? Be strong and courageous. Never be afraid. God did not want him to be afraid in any circumstance or situation. Likewise, today, he is enlightening us on what attitude of faith we, all the children of Zion who are living in the age of spiritual Joshua, should have while doing the work of the gospel. The history that took place 3,500 years ago was a physical battle. Isn't there a spiritual battle in this age? In the face of the spiritual battle, there's nothing to fear, not even a little. Just as Joshua's army was victorious, God already made it possible for everyone to be victorious when we preach the gospel in Samaria and to the ends of the earth, obeying the will of God in everything. When God chose Gideon's army, he rejected those who had fear. He also continued to emphasize to Joshua's army not to be afraid. When we see all this, we must have a courageous heart and an attitude of faith that does not fear in this age. Let us take a look at Deuteronomy chapter 1. Let us look at Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 19. In chapter 1, verse 19, it says, "Then, as the Lord our God commanded us, we set out from Horeb and went toward the hill country of the Amorites, through all that vast and dreadful desert that you have seen, and so we reached Kadesh Barnea." Kadesh Barnea is the region that borders the land of Canaan. They came to the point where they could enter the land of Canaan. Let us continue with verse 20. "Then I said to you, you have reached the hill country of the Amorites, which the Lord our God is giving us. See, the Lord your God has given you the land. Go up and take possession of it, as the Lord, the God of your fathers, told you. Now, let us go up and take possession of the land, since God has promised that land to us." With this expression, Moses encouraged the Israelites. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. Verse 22. "Then all of you came to me and said, 'Let us send men ahead to spy out the land for us and bring back a report about the route we are to take and the towns we will come to.' The idea seemed good to me, so I selected 12 of you, one man from each tribe. They left and went up into the hill country and came to the valley of Eshcol and explored it. Taking with them some of the fruit of the land, they brought it down to us and reported, 'It is a good land that the Lord our God is giving us.' But you were." How were they? Unwilling to go up. It was the land that God had promised to the Israelites. However, in Numbers chapter 14, all the spies spread a bad report about the land except for Joshua and Caleb. What if they had entered the land of Canaan right away from the land of Kadesh Barnea? Perhaps there could have been a war. There might have been some commotion. However, it was the place that God had appointed for them. If God had appointed a place for the Israelites, wouldn't that place be the best for the Israelites? Everyone, who made all these promises? These promises were not made by leaders of a certain tribe of people. God made them. That is why we too in this age must absolutely believe what God has promised to us. Of course, it is good to approach things with caution. However, if it is something that God has appointed, we should have faith and move forward without any fear. This is the secret to working for the gospel in the wisest and smartest way. Because of fear, 600,000 men died in the desert. Fear became the contributing factor that made the Israelites wander in the desert for 40 years. It was this heart of fear that caused them to die. For this reason, we must cast away all our fears and our spiritual situation in this age. Let us take a look at this scene where God teaches us this. Let us open Numbers chapter 14. When we take a look at chapter 14, verse 1, it says, "That night all the people of the community raised their voices and wept aloud. All the Israelites grumbled against Moses and Aaron. And the whole assembly said to them, 'If only we had died in Egypt or in this desert.'" Those who grumble all the time are the ones who are always fearful and have no courage. We should reflect upon ourselves today. Do I grumble often while living my life of faith? Or do I believe in God's promise and carry out all of the gospel work with courage? Let's continue with verse 3. "Why is the Lord bringing us to this land only to let us fall by the sword? Our wives and children will be taken as plunder. Wouldn't it be better for us to go back to Egypt?" And they said to each other, "We should choose a leader and go back to Egypt." Then Moses and Aaron fell face down in front of the whole Israelite assembly gathered there. Joshua son of Nun and Caleb son of Jephunneh, who were among those who had explored the land, tore their clothes and said to the entire Israelite assembly, "The land we passed through and explored is exceedingly good. If the Lord is pleased with us, He will lead us into that land, a land flowing with milk and honey, and will give it to us. Only do not rebel against the Lord. And do not be afraid of the people of the land, because we will swallow them up. Their protection is gone, but the Lord is with us. Do not be afraid of them." But the whole assembly talked about stoning them. Then the glory of the Lord appeared at the tent of meeting to all the Israelites. In these verses, God distinguished between those who would enter the land of Canaan and those who would not. God allowed those who had courage to enter the land of Canaan, but excluded those who trembled in fear. From a spiritual point of view, entering the land of Canaan means entering the kingdom of heaven. We are living in the age when the kingdom of God is very near at hand. Then, what kind of attitude of faith should we have in this age? When God says, "Preach the gospel in Samaria and to the ends of the earth," don't be discouraged or give up because you are afraid of people, afraid of the environment, afraid of the situation, or afraid of the circumstances. Rather, if we obey God's word of promise, His work will take place. In Numbers chapter 14, Joshua and Caleb encouraged the Israelites, but the other 10 spies gave only hopeless words. The words they spoke were full of things that had no courage, had no boldness, and had no faith in God. Let us take a look at the judgment God gave at that time. By doing so, we must keep in mind that God is giving us the same judgment spiritually, even in this age. Let's continue with verse 11. "The Lord said to Moses, How long will these people treat me with contempt? How long will they refuse to believe in me, in spite of all the miraculous signs I have performed among them? I will strike them down with a plague and destroy them, but I will make you into a nation greater and stronger than they. Moses said to the Lord, "Then the Egyptians will hear about it. By your power, you brought these people up from among them, and they will tell the inhabitants of this land about it. They have already heard that you, O Lord, are with these people, and that you, O Lord, have been seen face to face, that your cloud stays over them, and that you go before them in a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. If you put these people to death all at one time, the nations who have heard this report about you will say, 'The Lord was not able to bring these people into the land he promised them on oath, so he slaughtered them in the desert. Now may the Lord's strength be displayed, just as you have declared. The Lord is slow to anger, abounding in love, and forgiving sin and rebellion. Yet he does not leave the guilty unpunished. He punishes the children for the sin of the fathers, to the third and fourth generation. In accordance with your great love, forgive the sin of these people, just as you have pardoned them from the time they left Egypt until now." Verse 20 says, "The Lord replied, 'I have forgiven them as you asked. Nevertheless, as surely as I live, and as surely as the glory of the Lord fills the whole earth, not one of the men who saw my glory and the miraculous signs I performed in Egypt and in the desert, but who disobeyed me and tested me 10 times, not one of them will ever see the land I promise on oath to their forefathers. No one who has treated me with contempt will ever see it. But because my servant Caleb has a different spirit and follows me wholeheartedly, I will bring him into the land he went to, and his descendants will inherit it." This is the scene where God granted only Joshua and Caleb permission to enter the land of Canaan. Let us move on to verse 26. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "How long will this wicked community grumble against me? I have heard the complaints of these grumbling Israelites. So tell them, as surely as I live, declares the Lord, I will do to you the very things I heard you say. In this desert, your bodies will fall, every one of you, 20 years old or more, who is counted in the census and who has grumbled against me. Not one of you will enter the land I swore with uplifted hand to make your home, except Caleb son of Jephunneh and Joshua son of Nun." This is how God's judgment was given. Joshua and Caleb had faith in God's promise and had the courage to stand in a position to deliver the will of God to the Israelites. On the other hand, the 10 spies disregarded God's promise and his power. Since fear and terror preceded them, they said, "Oh, we will all be killed. Our enemies are like giants, and we are like grasshoppers. Although we may attempt to fight against them, it is obvious that we will be defeated." The 10 spies forsook the promise of God, who would give them the land, and instead spread their own thoughts to the people. No matter how faithful and bold the words of Joshua spoke were, the people did not listen to him. When they were at the border of Canaan, they faced this kind of situation. This all started from the moment when the spies were sent ahead to explore the land. When we look back over what happened in the past, let us engrave on our hearts what serious consequences can take place when we are in the midst of fear and cowardice where there is no faith. Saving souls and preaching are fighting in a spiritual battle, aren't they? It is a spiritual battle where the devil is trying to kill, and we are trying to save even one more soul. If we have fear, we will never be victorious. Today, we have confirmed that our absolute faith in God is the driving force that leads us to victory. Let us take a look at verse 32. But you, your bodies will fall in this desert. Your children will be shepherds here. How many years will they be shepherds here? For 40 years, suffering for your unfaithfulness, until the last of your bodies lies in the desert. This was the result of being afraid and not having courage. They wandered in the desert for 40 years, and eventually, they were in a very unfortunate situation where they were destroyed in the desert. When God says, "Be courageous," He does not just tell us to be courageous for no reason. God was leading all the work that eventually allowed the Israelites to destroy all the people like giants whom they feared. No matter what is taking place in front of you, do not fear. Do not be dismayed. I am with you. Everyone, this is absolutely necessary for our faith. Should I save that soul or not? If you don't hesitate, but be courageous, God orchestrates all the outcomes from that point on. Joshua and his army were victorious, not because the army was outstanding. Even though their enemy tried to defeat Joshua's army by gathering allies like the sand on the seashore, God defeated them all. There was a succession of victories whenever Joshua's army went into battle. Why was that? This was because God had already preordained all of their enemies to be defeated. Let us take a look at Joshua chapter 10, verse 6. In chapter 10, verse 6, it says, "The Gibeonites then sent word to Joshua in the camp at Gilgal, 'Do not abandon your servants. Come up to us quickly and save us. Help us, because all the Amorite kings from the hill country have joined forces against us.' So Joshua marched up from Gilgal with his entire army, including all the best fighting men. The Lord said to Joshua, 'Do not be.' What should he not be? No matter what the circumstances unfold before you, don't just look at physical phenomena that are visible to the naked eye. Do not be afraid of them. I have given them into your hand. Not one of them will be able to withstand you." God keeps telling Joshua not to be afraid, saying, "I am with you. Do not fear." Once you have the heart of feeling afraid of the spiritual situation, the work of saving souls fails that day. We must believe in the promise that God will be with us, and He will open the way for preaching the gospel. Who commanded us to make disciples? God tells us to make disciples, so we go out to make disciples. Therefore, there is no need to be afraid, right? Let's continue with verse 12. On the day the Lord gave the Amorites over to Israel, Joshua said to the Lord in the presence of Israel, "O sun, stand still over Gibeon. O moon, over the valley of Ahnsahnghong." So the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, till the nation avenged itself on its enemies. As it is written in the book of Jashar, the sun stopped in the middle of the sky and delayed going down about a full day. In the battle against the Amorites, in the valley of Ahnsahnghong, God made the sun stand still so that it delayed going down about a full day. To put Israel in an advantageous position, He even bound the rising moon. Scientifically speaking, celestial bodies cannot be stopped even for a moment. However, in the power of God, all these things actually happened. The sun did not set any longer, and the moon did not rise when it should have risen. Who is helping the Israelites by doing all this? It was our God. It is absurd from the world's perspective. This is an unimaginable situation. It is our God who would make such a situation occur in order to give us victory, so we can achieve glory. Therefore, there's no need for us to fear or be dismayed, not knowing what to do. We don't need to wander around by looking only at the situation and the physical phenomena of this world. Let's move on to chapter 10, verse 41. Joshua subdued them from Kadesh Barnea to Gaza, and from the whole region of Goshen to Gibeon. All these kings and their lands Joshua. What did he do? Joshua conquered in one campaign, because the Lord, the God of Israel, fought for Israel. God completely helped them. Do not fear. Do not be dismayed. Be courageous. This was the only thing God required. Let's see chapter 11, verse 1. When Jabin, king of Azor, heard of this, he sent word to Jobab, king of Madon, to the kings of Shimron and Akshaph, and to the northern kings who were in the mountains, in the Arabah, south of Kinnereth, in the western foothills, and in Naphath Dor on the west, to the Canaanites in the east and west, to the Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, and Jebusites in the hill country, and to the Hivites below Hermon, in the region of Mizpah. They came out with all their troops and a large number of horses and chariots, a huge army, as numerous as the sand on the seashore. All these kings joined forces and made camp together at the waters of Merom to fight against Israel. Everyone, just imagine the situation. How powerful are the allied forces of the enemies? From the viewpoint of the Israelite army, how would you feel if you were in this situation? The enemies form alliances in this way, and they are standing by to oppose us with great power. Wouldn't you feel afraid? However, the Israelites witnessed God's work when He parted the Red Sea. They also witnessed the 10 plagues that came upon Egypt. Moreover, they'd experienced that whenever there was a war, God was always with them, and they were victorious. At that time, there were not only many horses and chariots, but the horses and chariots were huge and drastically more in numbers. They were strategically lined up for the battle, that the Israelites could think, we will be defeated helplessly. In such an environment, wouldn't fear arise? However, God said, do not fear, only by looking at a certain situation physically. In the same way, when we preach the gospel, there are many times we fall into such foolishness of being discouraged, failing to preach the gospel by looking only at the external situation and the physical environment. We must compare our situation with the situation that unraveled before the army of Israel. Let's continue with verse 6. The Lord said to Joshua, do not be afraid of them, because by this time tomorrow I will hand all of them over to Israel. What will happen to them? They will be slain. You are to hamstring their horses and burn their chariots. So Joshua and his whole army came against them suddenly at the waters of Merom and attacked them. And the Lord gave them into the hand of Israel. They defeated them and pursued them all the way to Greater Sidon, to Mizraphoth Maim, and to the valley of Mizpah on the east, until no survivors were left. Enemies must have tactics, and they must have their own plans in order to win the war. However, whatever their plans may be, God thwarts them as nothing. Do not fear, for I am with you. Wasn't I the one who parted the Red Sea? Am I not the one who sent manna down from heaven for 40 years? Today, let us keep in our hearts the voice of God who says, Do not be afraid. Be courageous. Joshua led the Israelites to the land that God had promised. And the Israelites were also given the land of Canaan according to their tribes. Didn't such gracious work keep happening afterwards? We too will soon return to our eternal home, the kingdom of heaven. When this kind of situation happens right before entering heaven, how should we keep our faith and stand firm in God's promises? Once again, let us engrave this teaching in our hearts so that we will believe in God's promises and never lose our faith that God is with us. I hope we will be courageous to bring our lost brothers and sisters out of the hand of Satan, rescue them, and lead them to repentance, so that the grace of returning together to the eternal home, the kingdom of heaven, will be with us. By this, I would like to conclude this sermon. Thank you very much.